never thought I'd be the girl sitting in a half-empty apartment, surrounded by past due notices a shade of angry pink. But here I am. Let me just say, relationships aren't supposed to end like this. I'm Chloe, 29, and I'm about to tell you how my perfectly crafted life plan completely, spectacularly, fell apart. When I met Grant at my friend Tessa's housewarming party, I knew he was different. Not like my disaster ex Rick, who couldn't hold a job at the distribution center for more than 3 months and always needed just $50 till payday, babe, I swear. Grant had that look. The pressed button down, the substantial watch that wasn't trying too hard, that confident smile of a guy who wasn't living paycheck to paycheck. A guy who probably didn't even know what a payday loan was. I made sure to come across as this strong, independent career woman that night. I laughed a little louder at his jokes, mentioned my recent promotion at the restaurant, a slight exaggeration. It was more of a shift lead title, and talked about my 5-year plan. Men love that whole, I don't need you vibe. It makes them want to prove you wrong. Truth is, I was so tired of struggling. So tired. After Rick left me with 3 months of back rent and a credit card so maxed out it practically whimpered, I promised myself my next relationship would be different. My mom always said, Chloe, find a provider before you get too old, and all the good ones are gone. And for once, I was taking her advice seriously. Our first dates were everything I had been missing. Everything I deserved. He paid without me having to do that awkward, fake reach for my wallet. He suggested nice restaurants where the entrees were actual entrees, not just overpriced appetizers pretending to be meals. Places with cloth napkins. Places where I didn't have to calculate the tip in my head before I ordered my second glass of wine. What I didn't tell anyone, not even Tessa, was how I'd started moving my cash tips from my weekend shifts into a separate account. An account Grant didn't know about. Just a little cushion, you know? A girl's got to look out for herself. It was my secret, my safety net. By month 3, I was staying at his place 4, maybe 5 nights a week. Why pay for the heating in my crappy, drafty apartment when his condo was always the perfect temperature and twice as nice? It just made sense. When he gave me a key, a heavy, solid thing on a plain silver ring, I took it as a sign to bring over more of my stuff. A weekend bag became a drawer. A drawer became half the closet. Men like Grant, they want to feel needed, like they're solving your problems. It's like a weird turn-on for them or something. I'd sigh about how expensive my car insurance was, and the next day he'd have a quote from his provider that was $100 cheaper a month. I'd mention the flickering lights in my kitchen, and he'd offer to have his building's handyman swing by my place. He was fixing my life, piece by piece, and he seemed to love it. And I let him. Of course, I let him. This was the plan. This was stability. This was a man taking care of his woman. I was playing my part perfectly. The grateful, appreciative girlfriend who was still, you know, her own person. It was a delicate balance, and I was a goddamn acrobat on a high wire. For the first time since Rick, I could breathe. I could sleep through the night without that jolt of panic about rent. The future felt settled, secure. It felt like his expensive leather wallet, heavy and full of promise. The first time I noticed the shift, the tiny crack in my perfect new world, was around month 4. We were lying in bed, the city lights painting soft stripes across his ridiculously high thread count sheets. He started getting handsy, his touch familiar and expectant. But I was exhausted. A double shift, a rude customer who complained about his steak being too steaky, and my feet felt like 2 throbbing bruises. When I gently pushed his hand away, I felt him stiffen beside me. A subtle change, but I felt it. We haven't really been intimate much lately, he said. His voice was doing that careful thing men do when they're trying not to sound needy but failing spectacularly. Is something wrong? That's when it hit me. We'd fallen into a pattern, a routine. He paid for dinner. He bought me things a new coat because he said mine looked thin, a subscription to a fancy coffee delivery service. He let me stay over, essentially live with him, rent-free. And in return, he expected sex. As what? Payment? The thought made me feel gross. Cheap? I didn't expect the conversation 2 weeks later. It came out of nowhere. I feel like we need to talk about our relationship, Grant said one night. We were watching some show about wealthy people with terrible problems. He muted the TV. Muting the TV is never a good sign. Okay, I said, my guard immediately up. I just feel like Things are uneven between us, he said carefully, picking at a loose thread on the sofa cushion. You stay here most of the time. I cover most of our expenses, which is fine, but he trailed off, waiting for me to fill in the blank. I wasn't about to do that. But what, Grant? I asked, my voice sharp. Are you seriously suggesting I'm with you for your money? I said it loud, indignant. The way you need to when someone is getting a little too close to a truth you're not ready to admit, even to yourself. Because if you're expecting me to, perform on command just because you bought dinner, that's really, really messed up. He backpedaled immediately, just like I knew he would. No, that's not what I meant. Chloe, I'm sorry. The timing is bad. If you're stressed about money, I can help. Crisis averted. But something had shifted, and we both felt it. A week later, my boss, a woman named Cynthia with a perpetually pursed-lipped expression, called me into her office. The write-ups, the customer complaints, the late arrivals, it was all adding up. She said I wasn't being team-oriented, whatever that means. I saw the writing on the wall, so I quit before she could fire me. Why stay at a job with a boss who clearly had it out for me? It was a toxic environment. I didn't tell Grant right away. Instead, I started a new routine. I'd leave the apartment in the morning when he thought I was going to work. I'd spend my days at coffee shops, nursing a single latte for hours, or wandering through the mall. I'd come home at the regular time, complaining about a demanding customer or a long shift. The small amount I'd been skimming from his wallet when he was in the shower helped cover my coffee and lunch. It wasn't stealing. Not really. It was a relationship tax, an undeclared stipend. He wouldn't even notice a 20 here or there. The perfect opportunity came when Grant mentioned a possible promotion at his firm. More hours, more travel, but a significant pay increase. That's amazing, babe. You totally deserve it. I gushed over the expensive Italian dinner he was paying for. Then, carefully, I laid the groundwork. You know, I've actually been thinking about taking a break from work myself. The restaurant industry is just so draining. Maybe look for something I'm more passionate about. The hesitation in his eyes was brief, but I saw it. A flicker of something, maybe doubt. But still, Grant the provider, Grant the problem solver, nodded. If that's what you need. Just, be mindful of your expenses while you're not working. I smiled, relieved. Of course. I'm super good at budgeting. Another stretched truth. My secret savings account would cover maybe 3 weeks of basic expenses. But by then, he'd be used to covering things. Men adapt, especially when you give them time and make it seem like their idea. That night, he initiated again. I turned away. Headache, I murmured into the pillow. His sigh was audible in the darkness. A long, slow release of air that sounded a lot like resignation. What I didn't know then was that this would become our new normal. Him reaching out, me pulling away. Him paying for everything. Me finding reasons why intimacy just wasn't happening tonight. It wasn't a conscious strategy. Not at first. But it became one. Why should I have to perform just because he paid for dinner or covered my phone bill? A real man provides because he wants to, not because he expects something in return. At least, that's what I told myself as my temporary break from working stretched from 1 month to 2. Grant never directly called me out, but the questions started coming more frequently. Little jabs disguised as concern. How was the job search today? Did you see that post about the new hotel hiring? I could send it to you. Have you considered this industry or that company? I didn't realize how dangerous this game had become until the night I overheard him on the phone. He was in his home office, the door slightly ajar. I was on my way to get a glass of water, walking softly. I don't know, man, I heard him say, his voice low and tired. It's like we're living separate lives under the same roof. A pause. I held my breath, pressing my ear closer to the door. No, it's not just the physical stuff, though that's basically non-existent now. It's everything. She quit her job months ago, claims she's looking, but I never see her actually applying anywhere. I'm covering all the bills, all our dates, everything. Another, longer pause. My heart started to hammer against my ribs. Yeah, Dr. Finch said it sounds like financial exploitation, but that seems extreme. We're in a relationship, not a... Yeah, exactly. Dr. Finch? A therapist? My stomach dropped like a stone in a well. Grant had been discussing our relationship, discussing me, with someone else, and they were using terms like financial exploitation. Please. as if taking care of your girlfriend is some kind of crime. The nerve. That night, lying next to him in bed, the space between us feeling like a canyon, I realized I needed to make some changes. Not to be a better partner, but to secure my position. If Grant wanted to keep me around and he did, I was sure of it, he needed to accept that providing was his role. Period. No strings attached. I spent the next morning planning my approach. He needed to understand how things worked in a modern relationship. My friend Tessa's husband covered everything for her bills, shopping, vacations, and he didn't whine about it. Tessa had been married 3 years and just got a new SUV for her birthday. Clearly, she knew something about making relationships work. That weekend, we were having brunch at a trendy spot downtown. I decided it was time for the talk. I think we need to be clear about our expectations, I said, leaning forward, making serious eye contact over my mimosa. Like, what we really want from each other. His expression was hard to read, but he was listening. I believe relationships have natural roles, I continued, feeling confident, like I was giving a TED Talk. You're the provider type, right? Stable, successful, generous. That's who you are. And I bring other things to the table. Emotional support, making our place feel like a home, being your person. Relationships aren't 50-50 in every single category. They're more complementary. Complementary, he repeated, his tone flat. Utterly flat. Exactly. So this whole pressure about me finding a job right away, or feeling like I owe you things because you pay for dinner, that's not how healthy relationships work. Grant was quiet for so long, I started getting nervous. He just stirred his black coffee, the spoon making a soft clink, clink, clink against the ceramic. Finally, he set the spoon down and looked at me. His eyes, usually so warm, were like chips of ice. So, just to be clear, he said, his voice dangerously calm. You want me to financially support you completely, with no timeline for when you'll contribute again. And you also don't want me to expect physical intimacy as part of our relationship. When he put it that way, it sounded so transactional, so ugly. I want us to stop keeping score, I corrected, my voice rising slightly. You provide financially because you care about me, not because you expect something in return. That's what real love is. Chloe, relationships are partnerships, he said. And the dam of his patience finally broke. Both people contribute in multiple ways. Yes, finances might not be equal, especially right now, but there needs to be a balance overall. What other stuff, exactly? His voice had an edge I wasn't used to. Because from where I'm sitting, I'm covering all the expenses while you contribute. What? You're not working. Household chores are minimal since you're always tired. And intimacy is apparently something you feel pressured about. So tell me, what am I missing? I pulled my hand back from the table as if it had been burned. Wow. If you're keeping a scorecard, just say that. It's not a scorecard, he said, his voice tense but controlled. It's reality. I'm trying to understand what you are bringing to this partnership that balances out your expectations of me. That night, he slept in the guest room. I told myself it was just a cooling off period. Except Grant didn't sulk. He became pleasant, polite, distant. He stopped initiating any physical contact. He stopped suggesting date nights. It was like living with a very courteous, very handsome roommate who paid for everything. 2 weeks after our disastrous brunch, Grant came home with news. I got the promotion, he said, hanging his jacket by the door. That's amazing. I went to hug him, but his body language was stiff, keeping me at a distance. We should celebrate. Thanks, but I already have plans tonight. Team celebration. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Don't wait up. When he came home that night, late and smelling faintly of whiskey, I was waiting up, despite his instructions. He looked at me, his expression unreadable. Chloe, I think we need to talk about our living situation. My stomach dropped. What about it? I think it's time you found your own place. The words didn't compute at first. Are you breaking up with me? Over one conversation about money? It's not about one conversation. His voice was steady, resolved. It's about what that conversation revealed. We want fundamentally different things. You made it clear you expect me to financially support you while feeling no obligation to contribute to our relationship in ways that are important to me. You can't just throw away a year together over this. I love you. The words felt hollow even as I said them. Something flickered across his face, doubt. maybe regret, but it hardened again quickly. I need a partner, Chloe, not a dependent. I've given it a lot of thought, and this isn't working for me anymore. Is this because of that therapist? Dr. Finch? I demanded. What has he been telling you? He's helping me recognize unhealthy patterns, he said quietly. Something I should have done months ago. I switched tactics, moving closer, touching his arm. Baby, we can work through this. I'll start looking for jobs tomorrow. For real this time. He stepped back, breaking the contact. It's too late, Chloe. My decision is made. I'll give you 2 weeks to find a new place, and I'll even help with your first month's rent as a courtesy. But this relationship is over. I didn't sleep that night, or much of the next week. I alternated between begging, accusing, bargaining, and finally, planning. If Grant thought he could just discard me, just throw me out like last week's garbage, he had another thing coming. My first strategy was to make him jealous. I started accidentally leaving my phone where he could see notifications from male friends. I stayed out late without explanation, coming home reeking of cheap perfume I'd sprayed on myself in a bar bathroom. Grant's response? Absolutely nothing. He doesn't even care where I'm going. I complained to Tessa over drinks she graciously paid for. It's like he's already checked out. Tessa sipped her wine thoughtfully. Have you considered? Maybe he's seeing someone else? Men don't usually walk away unless they have a backup plan. The thought was like a spark in a tinderbox. I became obsessed. I had to uncover Grant's supposed affair. I started checking his phone when he was in the shower, searching for unfamiliar numbers or suspicious texts. Nothing. I created a fake Instagram account to monitor his activity. Nothing there either. He was a ghost. As the 2-week deadline approached, my tactics got more desperate. I deliberately forgot to look at apartments, thinking he'd extend my stay out of guilt or obligation. Grant remained unmoved, calmly repeating that my time was running out and I needed to find a place. 3 days before my move-out date, I still had nowhere to go. My emergency fund, the money I'd skimmed from Grant, plus my meager secret savings wouldn't cover the first and last month's rent, plus a security deposit anywhere decent. That night, I tried my final tactic: seduction. I put on the black lace lingerie Grant had bought for my birthday months ago. I fixed my hair and makeup, lit some candles in the bedroom, and waited. His expression when he saw me wasn't desire. It was pity. A deep, soul-crushing pity. Chloe, don't, he said quietly, staying in the doorway. This isn't going to change anything. Is there someone else? I demanded, the silk suddenly feeling cold and cheap against my skin. Just be honest with me. No, he said. And I believed him. Somehow, that made it worse. He wasn't leaving me for another woman. He was choosing to be alone rather than be with me. Then why? I whispered, the fight going out of me. Really, what did I do that was so terrible? Grant sighed, running a hand through his hair. You want a provider, Chloe, not a partner. I want a relationship based on mutual respect and contribution. We are fundamentally incompatible. So this is about sex, I said bitterly. Because I wouldn't put out whenever you wanted it. A flash of anger finally crossed his face. It was never just about sex. It was about your entire attitude. The entitlement. The manipulation. The lying. Lying? When did I lie? He just looked at me. About looking for jobs. About where you spent your days. About forgetting your wallet every time we went out. About needing money for things you never actually bought. He shook his head, a look of profound disappointment on his face. Did you really think I didn't notice the cash disappearing from my wallet? Or the charges on my credit card for things that never seemed to exist? My face burned with a heat that had nothing to do with the candles. I was borrowing. Taking without asking isn't borrowing, Chloe. It's stealing. I spent the next day in a blind panic. I called every apartment in my price range. Nothing was available immediately. There was one option I had been avoiding. Rick's brother, Kyle. He'd always had a thing for me, even when I was with Rick. He owned a decent condo across town, was separated from his wife for the 3rd time, and I just knew, he'd let me stay. The price wouldn't be monetary. But I was running out of options. On Friday morning, Grant left for a business trip. Our goodbye was painfully awkward. The movers will be here at 10 on Sunday, he said, not meeting my eyes. Here's the first month's rent I promised. He handed me an envelope with cash. After he left, I ripped it open. There was enough for 1 month in a basic apartment. Nothing more. just the bare minimum he'd promised. That evening, I met Kyle at his condo. He'd made some attempt at dinner, overcooked pasta and store-bought sauce, but I could tell food wasn't his priority. After one glass of cheap wine, his hand was on my knee. "We broke up," I said, trying to sound sad. "His loss," Kyle replied, moving closer on the couch. "Always thought you were too good for him anyway." I forced a smile. "Actually, I'm kind of in a bind. I need a place to stay for a bit, while I find a new apartment. Any chance your spare room is available?" Kyle's smile widened. It didn't reach his eyes. "For you? Always. Stay as long as you need." The implication was crystal clear. I ignored the sick feeling churning in my stomach and thanked him, saying I'd move in on Sunday. It was just temporary, I told myself. Just until I figured things out. Sunday came faster than I expected. I watched numbly as the movers Grant had hired efficient, impersonal men packed my clothes, my few pieces of furniture, my personal items into their truck. 3 hours later, they unloaded everything into Kyle's spare bedroom. He hovered in the doorway, offering unwanted help, his eyes lingering too long when I bent to unpack a box. "Make yourself at home," he said for the third time. "We're going to have fun, you and me." I forced another smile. "Thanks again for this. It's just until I find my own place." "No rush," he replied, finally leaving me alone. 2 weeks into my stay with Kyle, the situation was deteriorating fast. My temporary arrangement came with increasingly clear expectations. My job search was going nowhere. My references from my last position were lukewarm at best, and explaining my months-long employment gap was awkward. "You know," Kyle said one night after I'd received another rejection email, "you could always work at the Rusty Mug with me. Bar's always hiring servers. Tips are decent." The Rusty Mug was the dive bar where Kyle worked security on weekends. It was exactly the kind of place I'd sworn I'd never end up. But beggars can't be choosers. That night, I finally broke down and called my mom. We hadn't spoken in months, not since I'd boasted about how well things were going with Grant and how he was taking care of everything. Pride had kept me from admitting the truth. "I was wondering," I stammered, twisting the phone cord, "if I could maybe borrow some money? Just to get back on my feet. First and last month's rent. A security deposit. I'll pay you back as soon as—" "Honey," she interrupted, her voice gentle but firm. "Your father and I are on a fixed income now. We just don't have extra to lend out." Her words stung. "Fine. Forget I asked." I snapped, and hung up before she could respond. I was scrolling numbly through Facebook when a post from our mutual friend Ashley appeared. "Congratulations to the happy couple." She said yes. Attached was a photo. Grant and a blonde woman I'd never seen before. Her hand was extended to show off an enormous engagement ring. They were on a beach somewhere, both tanned and smiling. A smile of pure, uncomplicated joy. I nearly dropped my phone. Engaged. It had been barely 2 months since our breakup, and he was already engaged. Tessa was right. He had a backup plan. Or maybe she wasn't a backup plan at all. My first training shift at the Rusty Mug was even worse than I expected. The uniform I was given was a size too small deliberately, I suspected, based on the manager's smirk. The regular customers were handsy. The other servers were cliquish. And by the end of the night, my feet were killing me. And I got no tips, since I was in training. A week into my new routine, I was physically and emotionally drained. The tips were inconsistent. I'd started applying for room rentals but kept getting turned down when they ran credit checks or asked for references. Kyle's patience was wearing thin. He'd started forgetting to knock before entering my room and making more explicit comments about us working out our arrangement. I kept deflecting, but I knew I was on borrowed time. The next morning, I woke to a pounding on my bedroom door. Kyle, clearly drunk despite the early hour, was demanding to be let in. "We need to talk about the arrangement," he slurred. "Time's up, Chloe." I glanced around the room frantically. I had nowhere to go. Not enough money saved for my own place. No friends willing to take me in. The doorknob stopped rattling. "Fine," Kyle muttered from the other side. "But you're out by the weekend if you don't figure something out. I'm not running a charity here." I heard him stumble away. 5 days. I had 5 days. One landlord agreed to meet me that afternoon. A basement room in a house, shared by 5 college students in the worst part of town. The room was awful, tiny, damp, with one small window near the ceiling. The shared bathroom was filthy, but the landlord was willing to waive the credit check if I paid an extra security deposit. I handed over nearly all my remaining cash, desperate. When I arrived back at Kyle's, there was an unfamiliar car in the driveway. As I approached the front door, I heard female laughter. Kyle's estranged wife, Vicky, was back. Their on-again, off-again relationship was apparently on again. Perfect. Just perfect. "Chloe, come meet Vicky, she's moving back in," Kyle called out cheerfully. I forced a smile and entered the kitchen. Vicky was pretty in a hard way, her eyes narrowing when she saw me. "So, you're the roommate," she said, her tone making it clear she didn't believe that story for a second. "Just temporarily," I assured her. "Actually, I found a new place today. I'm moving out tomorrow." "Today would be better," Vicky said bluntly. "I'm bringing my stuff over tonight." 2 hours later, I was moved into the basement room, if you could call a mattress on the floor, and 2 suitcases against the wall moved in. I lay on the thin mattress, listening to the college students partying upstairs, and stared at the water stains on the ceiling. How did I end up here? Was it Grant's fault for not understanding what men were supposed to provide? Was it Dr. Finch's fault for planting ideas in Grant's head about exploitation? Or, and the thought crept in, unwanted and sharp, was it my fault? For expecting someone else to fund my life without offering much of anything in return? No. I pushed the thought away. I was the victim here. Grant was the one who'd changed the rules mid-game. But as I drifted into an uneasy sleep, a small, treacherous voice whispered, "Then why are you the one lying on a mattress in a basement, while he's celebrating his engagement on a beach?" It's been 6 months since that night. I'm still in that basement room, though I've upgraded from a mattress on the floor to an actual bed frame I found on clearance. Between 2 jobs, the rusty mug at night, and a coffee shop in the early mornings, I'm working nearly 70 hours a week. My feet constantly ache. My back is in a perpetual spasm. My hands are cracked and dry from cleaning chemicals and hot water. I haven't spoken to Grant since the breakup. I deleted all my social media accounts after seeing one too many happy photos of him and his fiancée, Audrey. Kyle texts occasionally, usually late at night when he's fighting with Vicky, but I never respond. The last blow, the one that finally shattered the last of my delusions, came when I ran into Tessa at the grocery store. I was in my coffee shop uniform, hair pulled back in a messy bun, no makeup, exhausted after a double shift. She was in designer workout clothes, fresh from a Pilates class, glowing. "Chloe! Oh my gosh!" she exclaimed, her eyes widening at my appearance. "I've been trying to reach you. You just disappeared from social media." "Been busy," I said vaguely, suddenly conscious of my chipped nail polish and the dark circles under my eyes. "Listen, I don't know if you heard, but Grant and Audrey got married last month. A small ceremony in Mexico, married. Already. The news shouldn't have hurt after everything else. But it did. A sharp, physical pang where I thought I'd gone numb. It's so crazy how things work out," Tessa continued, oblivious to my turmoil. "Remember how I always used to say that men should just provide? Well, Brad and I are actually in couples therapy now. It turns out that mindset was really damaging our relationship. I've started my own business, a little online boutique. It feels amazing to contribute." The irony was almost too much to bear. Tessa, my role model for the lifestyle I craved, was now happily working on herself and her marriage, while I was here. That night, lying on my cheap bed frame, listening to the bass thumping from the party upstairs, I finally allowed myself to face the truth. The ugly, jagged truth I had been avoiding for months. My situation wasn't bad luck. It wasn't other people's fault. It was the predictable, inevitable outcome of my own choices, my own entitlement, my own refusal to be an equal partner. I had expected Grant to fund my lifestyle indefinitely, while I contributed, what, exactly? Not emotional support, I'd withdrawn that. Not a partnership in building a future. I'd expected him to build it for me. Not even regular intimacy. I'd weaponized that, used it as a tool for control. I wish I could say this story ends with a complete transformation, that I've learned my lesson, changed my ways, and I'm building a healthy new relationship with someone who values the new me. But real life isn't that tidy. The truth is, I still sometimes find myself scrolling through dating apps, unconsciously evaluating men by their earning potential. I still feel a flash of hot resentment when I see women being taken care of by their partners while I work 2 jobs just to barely make rent. Old patterns don't disappear overnight, and entitled thinking is a hard habit to break. But at least now, I recognize it for what it is. Here's what I know for sure. The philosophy I once embraced, I don't owe him anything. He should just provide cost me everything. Not because society is unfair to women who know their worth, but because relationships built on one-sided expectations aren't relationships at all. They're transactions. And transactions have terms that can be terminated when one party feels they're getting a raw deal. Grant wasn't the villain in this story for refusing to be my ATM. He was just a man with enough self-respect to walk away from someone who valued his wallet more than his heart. The only person truly obligated to provide for me is me. It's a hard lesson, learned the hard way. But maybe that's the only way some lessons stick.